All right, welcome back everybody. We've managed to grab 6 of our close friends and MVPs on site here at MVP Summit on the Microsoft Redmond campus, and we're sitting outside in the Commons on a beautiful sunny Redmond day. And we thought we'd talk a little bit about IT Pro topics and what it means to folks in the cloud world. So first up, a quick round of introductions. So let's just head from left to right.
Elaine Van Bergen from OBS in Melbourne, Australia, so I'm an architect down there.
Okay. Mark Rhodes from Empire in Australia, I'm a cloud services architect.
Michelle Caldwell, North America, I'm with Avanade, and I'm the Director of Collaboration.
Victor Wallén works as a SharePoint architect or Azure architect nowadays at Acando in Sweden.
And Thomas Vochten, SharePoint MVP based out of Belgium.
All right. Fantastic. You want to start us off, CJ? You want to?
Yeah. So I talked to a bunch of people, and they all say move to the cloud, and my career's dead because they used to, building servers and installing and running stuff on-prem. And so we thought we'd talk a little bit about what the movement to the cloud over the last few years has meant to IT pros, and sort of riff on that.
Cool. Well, Michelle, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So what I've seen, and I'm not an IT pro myself, but I work with a lot of IT pros, and I think right now is a really exciting time to be an IT pro. I disagree with my career's over, life is dead and move on. I think it's more challenging now with cloud and hybrid scenarios for IT pros to push themselves beyond the traditional IT pro skills that they've had in the past and really grow and evolve. So that's what I've seen.
Cool. So, Mark?
Yeah, every session I've done on the topic of cloud has ended with someone asking, what does this mean for IT pros, right? So, and there's so much fear out there about it. I've been saying it's great, just embrace it. You're going to get rid of all the stuff you don't want to do, like provisioning mailboxes, setting up VMs. Who wants to do all this really tedious menial work when you can go and set up this massive hybrid deployment? That's where I see that.
So you're saying a little bit more like architect kind of stuff and more kind of like planning and strategy kind of stuff, and not so much of like the remedial stuff or the stuff that is more like just another plus one operation of like another mailbox, another account or something like that. That kind of stuff that can all be taken off because it's not so much like thought work and stuff like that. It's the more creative stuff comes in from. The cloud allows you to get rid of all that just monotonous work and stay on the creative side.
That's it. And if you're getting rid of all of that old work, you've got to do something with your time, right? You're going to open the doors to all this really fantastic new work.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, Thomas.
Yeah, one of the new challenges, for example, for IT pros in the cloud world is the identity and authentication piece. Azure AD, ADFS, DirSync, all these new technologies that we've not been accustomed to in the past. There are great new opportunities for us too.
Yeah, it's funny you say that too. This morning I did interviewed some developers, and one of the big things for them was the improvements in identity very recently. One of the things I brought up too is that we saw that I think last week or 2 weeks ago, probably 2 weeks ago now, that we saw that Amazon came out with their own directory service product that kind of rivals Azure AD, and in a sense, you can kind of look at it and say it's almost more AD than Azure AD is. So it's nice to, from my perspective, it's great to see that kind of competition to be pushing the Azure guys even farther. So yeah, the identity thing, that's definitely huge.
Yeah, it's true. The Amazon stuff is indeed more a traditional Active Directory. You can even join computers to it, I guess.
Yes.
I thought. So it's very interesting to see where they're heading.
Yeah, it's like full bore identity. It seems where like Azure AD is more users and groups identity and apps, but not so much the computer stuff and group policy stuff and everything. Yeah, Victor, you had something to add to it?
One thing I think is really interesting is something that the developers have been very familiar with the latest few years is the agile approach. As an IT pro, you can now be more agile. The operations can be more agile to respond to requests from external companies and internal resources, etc. You don't have to cuddle with the blinking servers or tripping over wires, and as Mark said, you don't have to focus on those basic tasks. You can focus on the architecture, as you mentioned, scaling out really fast if you need that, scaling out in a short time, or scaling up. And that kind of agile approach as an IT pro.
So looking at it from that perspective, do you see things being more, so it sounds like you described like the hardware side, the physical side of it's gone from it, and it sounds like you're all painting a very positive picture of it and all the things that are removed for you. What about the challenging side of it, or any kind of downsides to it? What new kind of challenges does this kind of an approach bring to us. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we continue. You're moving up a couple of steps on the ladder as well. If we're talking about the infrastructure that you can use as a service, but also platform as a service, the IT pros and all that kind of stuff. We mentioned identity and those things as well. But so you have to broaden your skills as an IT pro and not just focus on those servers standing in a rack somewhere. So, which is also fun being an IT pro, but you have new stuff to learn.
Cool. Yeah, Michelle.
And I'll just continue on what you were saying, Victor. Soft skills are going to be really, really important for the IT pros moving forward as they move up the stack, right? And they move up through the architecture. Having those skills to help with strategy, to give an opinion because they know what's going on in the platform, and to be able to work with the business more proactively on that. I think that's a huge challenge or opportunity, however you want to look at it, for IT pros who traditionally maybe didn't have to have that level of interaction before.
Gotcha.
We talked to obviously loads of IT pros in our line of work, and one thing I've noticed is that I used to call the IT department the no department, right? Because every time you go ask them, they say no, and usually it's well meant, right? They're just so busy, and definitely something I hope we see is that just the bread and butter stuff is taken care of for them, and they're able to move up the stack, as you said, and do more higher value things. Like from an office team perspective, one thing we're excited about is having them provisioning less mailboxes and having to do all the table stakes bread and butter stuff and rolling out the new version of Office, right? Because usually they're licensed for it years in advance, and it's the problem of enough time and effort to go get it rolled out that's usually the problem, not a money or a licensing problem.
No.
So just having them given more time to do things like that as an example is hopefully pretty exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Mark, what about you?
I've got a whole heap of challenges actually. The first one is even if you look at like Azure, right? It's so broad that getting across everything is next to impossible. I don't know anyone who's gotten across all of Azure yet. Two, things are changing so fast. It's so hard to keep up with them. There's new features coming in. We're learning about them today, right? So all these amazing new features. Unless you're focused like a laser on that little area, you're not going to find out about all these new features.
Yeah.
And the third challenge as an IT pro in particular is that, Michelle said that users are going to have to get IT pros are going to have to get soft skills. It's exactly right, because business guys are now going straight off the website, signing up with a credit card. They're not going to the IT team. IT team's got to now deal with that. So it's a challenge for them.
So that sounds like a governance kind of an issue, being able to kind of have control over what, centrally have control and insight over what the organization is using, what their technical footprint is all over the place, but still enabling these different groups and divisions within the organization to run off and go do something to actually get stuff done, because it may not, what the IT guys are not, what the IT department is not providing is not what is needed by that specific business, or by as a whole, the company as a whole is not prepared to get into to make a capital investment around that area. And they can say, look, you can go spin off your own little thing, and not just say that if this is what you're looking for, you don't just have to kill it because we don't have it on-prem, or because we don't support it as the IT group within the organization.
That sounds right to me.
It's funny you say that too, about like the things that you can, how do you stay on top of all this stuff? I think that's one of the things that we joke about with the podcast, is that we've always got content on a roll-up of what's new, because the Azure comes out with 50 new things, it seems like every Tuesday. So it's like super easy to just have new stuff to talk about. But yeah, so yeah, I mean.
Well, one of the things I was going to add is I think it's even interesting to change the way you think about stuff. So, really simple example, one of our IT guys use Azure for the first time. He's like, my SharePoint environment's broken, how do I debug it? I'm like, you don't.
Yeah.
Just hit delete, spark up a new one, it's going to be this quick. And as soon as he knew that, he's like, oh, of course, right, done. I know how to think now. But it is that whole change of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other piece is, do you leave your test and dev environment on 24 hours a day? No, it's going to cost you a lot of money if you do, but internal IT, you just don't think about that stuff, right? Whereas on Azure, you want to be turning that stuff off.
That's quite the grapefruit over the plate to talk about our startup, but we'll hold off on doing that.
Another episode, maybe.
Yeah, another episode, that'd be great, yeah. How many of you guys do you see your customers are using, so I assume everybody here, we're all 365, generally speaking, so we all have at least a footprint there or some experience there. And Azure is a natural kind of pivot to or an extension, I should say, to Office 365, doing customizations there. How many of you see people using like other clouds and interfacing or integrating them with Office 365? Do you guys see anybody doing that? Any of your customers doing it? Or yes?
I do.
Michelle?
So I've seen some of our larger enterprise customers using Amazon Web Services tied into the platform, Azure, Office 365. I think the challenge moving forward for cloud is going to be for enterprises, large enterprises that are going to have footprints across all these different providers. How do they manage that in a unified fashion?
Yeah.
Right? This is not just managing Azure, and now you've got Amazon and Office 365 and maybe 5 different other providers. So the IT organization is going to need a better way to manage that as a whole.
Yeah, so having a good footprint, a 10,000 foot view of all of my clouds. Like I need a sky view. I don't need just a cloud view. I need a sky view.
Do you even think like another provider like AWS or Azure is really SharePoint in the cloud? It's an interesting question, right? It's like,
do you mean like when you put like IaaS? Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
so
VMs and in Azure, is that considered like doing SharePoint in the cloud?
Yeah, well, I guess so, and it's a discussion we're having internally. I think that people understand virtual machines, so it's the easiest thing to jump onto Azure or Amazon and go with virtual machines. They don't really, it's a big jump to go with the PaaS side of stuff.
Yeah.
We're certainly trying to push people there, but it is just that leap too far. So, probably,
More of a stepping stone type approach?
That's what we're thinking. I think a year ago our customers were scared of the cloud. Now they're not. They want it, but they're not quite that far forward. So maybe another year it'll be easier.
So going off on that too, Victor, go ahead.
Another perspective from Amazon versus Azure, coming from not North America. Basically, there are none providers than Microsoft Azure in the world globally. Amazon is only US. So the legal stuff and all that kind of stuff, they are not certified in that way that's required in Sweden, for instance. So basically, Azure is the only possibility for if you want that kind, except the local players.
Or a third-party hoster, yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. Is Rackspace an option overseas as well?
No,
really?
No, it's only North America.
Wow, that's a hell of I didn't realize that. That's a big benefit there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something too about going back to this idea of using IaaS for hosting Azure. IaaS for hosting Azure. Sorry, IaaS for hosting SharePoint. What does the story look like then for how many of your customers are using IaaS either in AWS or in Azure to host SharePoint for production farms? And then part B is how many of your customers are using that as a DR scenario, as a standby DR scenario? Is that a common thing that you're seeing?
Yeah, I don't have any customers that are using Azure to host the production SharePoint environments, but I do have customers who use it for DR. Yeah, absolutely.
Are they using the disaster recovery stuff that's in the new offering that Azure uses, or?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, very cool.
I have pilots running.
I actually work for a cloud provider, so while we have stuff in Azure, we've also got our own cloud, obviously, and we've got about 50 or 60 customers who are hosting SharePoint up in our cloud, and it works great. There are some limitations, mostly around integration with identity, right? Because most of them have their own Active Directory up in that cloud, just for that purpose.
Right.
So things like user profile syncing doesn't really work that well, so we tend to ignore that functionality. But it's quite a popular option in Australia.
Yes, Lynn.
What we're finding is some of the easiest workloads to start with is really websites. So we do have some production websites sitting on Azure, actually in virtual machines due to specific requirements they wanted there. Then we've got a lot of dev and test. It's not necessarily that we couldn't have production. The size of those farms would be fine, but again, it's a starting point for customers. They're a lot more comfortable having a dev or a test in there than they are going straight to prod.
Don't have the appetite to really bet on the farm or to bet the farm.
Quite yet.
I got you. They don't want to bet the farm on the cloud just yet. Yeah, Michelle.
So I'm working with a really large customer right now, and they've kind of moved to the cloud a little differently. They are doing Azure, SharePoint with Azure 2013 with Project Server 2013. It's a highly customized app, heavy workloads, ties back into their line of business data behind the firewall, and it's some very highly restricted IP-based information. So for that workload, they're going in Azure. For the other workloads that have been traditionally on-prem, they're going to the cloud. They went Azure first, highly complex app, then they're moving the simpler loads to Office 365.
Oh, that's interesting. Very interesting. Cool.
I got a quick question. We got a couple of masters at the table, and just to throw a slight curveball here, what do you think that program would have been like had it just been Office 365? Because I know there's a ton of IT Pro focused stuff in that program, and how do you think it would have changed? And before we get rained on.
Yeah.
Well, they'd already started to integrate a bunch of that into the program, because I guess the way I look at it when I talk about SharePoint, you've got to know cloud and you've got to know on-prem, because customers need to know the difference.
Gotcha.
So I would not have liked to see a program that was only 365.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's just one of the options. But yeah, I mean, more content on that would be great. This IT pros are busier than ever with this cloud stuff, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, about 1/3 of the last course was about 365 and identity management and that kind of stuff. So it was already in it and was planned for that. And it was changed from MCM to MCSM, Solution Master. So it wasn't just about the on-prem stuff. It was we're talking a lot about the cloud.
Gotcha.
And preparing for that.
Very cool. Okay, so we're going to start to kind of wrap this up because it's starting to sprinkle a little bit harder before we get completely dumped on here. Let me pop a little something on you. CJ and I started doing something recently at the end of our shows. We call them our picks. And so what we do at the picks is that just what is like the one thing that is interesting to you, what things you're working on, what's, you know, not personal, I mean like outside of work stuff. Not a personal thing. You don't have to do anything epic right now. But like, you know, a book that you're reading, some new cool technology, you know, that kind of stuff. All kinds of stuff this morning. So it's meant to be a rapid fire thing, 10-15 seconds a piece. So I'm just going to pick somebody at random. So just come up with something. So
Okay.
start with you, Thomas.
I'm currently busy with an epic battle for my getting things done productivity stuff. I've like most IT folks, I have a huge mailbox, and that is my main priority outside work now. Getting control back of my inbox.
Oh, very
Excellent.
cool. Zero inbox.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mark, how about you?
I'm reading a book right now called Tubes, Behind the Scenes of the Internet, and it's fascinating actually to
interesting.
hear about how this stuff came about. And not the old internet like 70s, we're talking about 1999 onwards. It's really interesting.
That's cool. Do you know the author?
Maybe.
You maybe know the author. We'll have to put a link to it in the show notes. Good books that other people like us that are reading. Always interested in that. Elaine, how about you?
I have a serious backlog of Xbox One games. When it gets above
Nice.
the console, you know, I'm like, I've got to get back in.